Okay, hello everyone. I think we will be starting. I'm glad to see that so many people joined today, and I think that you have some interest to support Ukraine and Ukrainian society. My name is Karolina. I'm going to moderate the discussion today, and also want to introduce you to my colleague Evgennia. She will help us with the tech support. Evgennia, can you please raise your hand or your voice? Yep. Currently I'm working as a coordinator of Advocacy project for National Network of Local Philanthropy Development. And like around 1 year ago, we started the Advocacy project, was called Give the Power to Ukrainian NGOs. And we were inspired by the localization movement, which called Shift the Power. So today I want to also say many thanks to Jenny and Global Fund for Community Foundations who are hosting us today. So since we started the campaign in August, we had a chance to be introduced to a lot of people who are supporting and lobbying the interests of Ukrainian society. And this panel is going to be like the open discussion to let more people also Yep. Please, can you?
I will do it, and it will go for your.
Okay, can I ask someone from the tech team to mute the microphones? Thanks. Yeah, so and today's discussion gonna be the open platform to let more people also know that Ukraine is supported not only from inside but from like other countries and from other foundations who are trying to understand our reality and promote our best interest. And the last short piece of organizational information. I have some questions prepared for our speakers, and we will discuss them till around 12. And then we'll have the open mic, open microphone where you can ask your questions as well. If you see that you want to some of the speakers to follow up anything on the discussion before the 12, you can write a question to the chat, and we will try to pick up the most relevant one. For the open microphone, you also will be invited to the stage. You can write to the chat or unmute yourself and ask. And now I want to introduce our speakers. So here you can see Josie. She's from Catholic Agency for Overseas Development, and she's Ukrainian program manager. Also, CAFOD signed for Charter for Change, which is like the quite big initiative which supports and promotes localization of humanitarian help, which is really relevant for Ukraine today. Also, you can see the Evgennia Mazurenko. She's advisor for nonprofit leaders with plus 13 years of management of charitable foundations. And now she is in charge of one, as I think, amazing project for matchmaking between donors and local NGOs. And I think she will tell more about this herself later. And also, we should have Olga Prodan. She is a president and founder of Ukrainian Canadian Advocacy Group. And I want to start with a quick opening question. Yeah, if you're interested, you could check our chat, and there you can find a little bit more info about us and about our speakers. And I want to start with like opening question to our speakers. What is your current goals for what you want to achieve by promoting the interests of Ukrainian society, and which changes you're expecting in like the nearest future, let's say till the end of this year? Yeah, you're free to choose who wants to answer first.
Josie, will you start first?
Sure, no problem. So CAFOD is involved in a number of initiatives in advocacy in Ukraine and in our response in Ukraine, but I think the three main things that we are, I suppose, pushing for and working with our partners and in coalition with other Ukrainian NGOs would be, number one is getting the HCT to put together and start implementing an actual measurable, practical localization strategy, which would be made public and which could then be, I suppose, measured, well, progress could then be measured against. Another big push for us is getting NGOs, INGOs, but also donor states who are supporting the crisis in Ukraine to put in place or agree to shifting their funding away from large INGOs and UN mechanisms and more towards direct funding to local Ukrainian NGOs. And as part of that, we're also working on, and I suppose, advocating for setting up new mechanisms to allow direct funding to go to local NGOs. And then I suppose the third one is supporting Ukrainian partners and local Ukrainian agencies and CSOs to scope and establish a coordination hub or platform or mechanism that works for them, recognizing that the coordination platform that is taking shape at the moment is potentially driven, or maybe doesn't have as much involvement, or is maybe not as useful for local NGOs as it could be.
Thank you.
Can I start?
Sure.
Yes. Hello to everyone. My name is Evgennia Mazurenko. I'm former director of the Gori Foundation. I left this foundation 3 months ago, and currently I'm registering my own organization, which we'll call Philanthropy in Ukraine. Why I'm doing it? Because working this sphere more than 13 years, I see that it's very important to create educational environment and opportunities for local organizations. I see that in this full-scale war, all Ukrainians started to understand that we came over our inferiority. And when in the previous time, we usually wanted to have speakers from abroad and focusing on best practices from abroad. But this time we understand that best practices also here. And it's very important to bring that Ukrainian organization, local organization, they're amazing. They have their capacity, but doing everyday work, very difficult to focus on development and to focus on relationship development. So I see that it's very important to create environment where organization can get the support for their development. Just imagine if organization will not think about their salaries for at least 1 year and doing only their focus. Working with the other donors and especially with the local businesses who support NGOs or doing some partnership with NGOs. I see the big problem is organizations don't have administration support. So usually they get funds only for the project, but not for the administration support. So for the future goals for me and my team within Philanthropy in Ukraine, we want to create opportunities for local organizations where they will have best practices, educational support, not only trainings, because, you know, usually you can hear trainings, but it's important that this training should be practical. And after this training, you can understand where to have some opportunities. So last year, I was focusing on matching local organizations and international organizations, because as I was CEO of the Gori Foundation, and the Gori Foundation is a member of many international associations, it was a great entry point to the global meetings. And what I identified for myself that not so many organizations on a global level were here. And it's very important not only to match organization like local and global, but to raise the voice. And the question is how to raise this voice, how to be heard on a global level. And I see that we can speak about how to unite local organization, how to develop local associations. But I catch myself thinking that I don't know my colleagues within NGO sector. I don't know how they work, what their problems. We have some meetings in Ukraine, but it's not enough. So next week it will be the big event in Ukraine, Evgennia organized. But frankly speaking, I don't know so many meetings such as Evgennia does. So I was thinking, why we don't develop relationships within NGO sector? Because, you know, officially having such association, it's a good idea, but before having some official things, we need to know each other. So for the future goals, development of relationships between local organizations, very important. Create roundtables, unofficial meetings. It's networking that's really needed. And you see, we have even right now, we have online, but offline, nothing could be replaced, you know. And Karolina mentioned about platform. Traveling around the world last year and been to US this year, many international organizations ask me how we can know local organization. Like some of them we can find in Facebook, thanks to some partners. But how we can find those who small, who focus on their activities in the field, who doesn't speak English, how we can find them? It is also a question for me because many organizations, they are invisible. And you know, the culture of giving in Ukraine, like among Ukrainians, we think that it's not important to speak about what you are doing, but communication, it's not only a part of sharing information, it's also a part of the transparency of your work. So it's also very important to give local organizations the tools and the support for developing their communication. So to my team, with my team, we decided to create a platform, verification platform for local organization that will help to raise awareness of local organization on a global level. It will be like a catalog of organizations previously verified. Of course, the question for me as for a manager, how to motivate Ukrainian organization to go through all verification process, because the organization will ask me, well, like, what I will get from the verification? Why should I do all the processing? So as a manager, I'm thinking how to create motivation and opportunities also within this platform. So we're in the process of development, and we hope that this platform will help international community to see more local organizations in Ukraine. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Just a notification for speakers. We have some time limitations, so I will raise my hand if you have like 1-2 minutes left to finish your answer. Thanks. And we have one more speaker. It's Olga Prodan. She's the president founder of Ukrainian Canadian Advocacy Group. And just to quickly follow up her, we're starting with an opening questions. What is your current goals in your lobbying activities, and which changes you expect for Ukrainian society to reach in, like, let's say, till the end of this year?
Hi guys, it's extremely nice to see all of you, all these bright, happy faces. Currently, I'm in Ukraine. Tomorrow, I'm coming back to Vancouver, Canada. So right now, what we are doing, last year, like I'm sure as everyone here, we were working extremely hard on cultural, political, social level in Canada. So all the messages which our government in Ukraine gave us, we push through the military, through the society in Canada extremely strong. So basically, when Volodymyr Zelensky told grain from Ukraine, we had a Holodomor Day, and just 1 week after, we start pushing this. So this is like our cultural and political role. And the most important, what we are doing right now, it's rehabilitation program for the kids of fallen heroes. This program we start in July 22. Basically, we already worked with 140 kids. It's intensive rehabilitation program, and we are hoping to work with 400 kids this year. We have lots of professionals from Canada, from Denmark, and I'm involving them here to Ukraine. They are a little bit scared, but we are in Carpathian Mountains, so they are okay with that part. So this is our basic goal for now. It's rehabilitation for kids, and next step is preparing the society of Ukraine and system of Ukraine for guys who will come back, for our soldiers, because I believe our system is not flexible enough. Our system doesn't have right professionals yet, unfortunately. So this is our main goal for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And I want to follow up with a question to Evgenia, and I encourage other speakers to contribute if you have something to say. So as you're like advocating from Ukraine to like international plenary, what is like the hardest challenge to open the dialogue about Ukraine, to like make people think and speak about the problems that we're having, maybe from your last, I don't know, experience or acquaintances?
Last year, I've been to US more than 5 times. And also I was a speaker within Philia Association and in Canada. And it wasn't difficult for me to communicate with the donors. But as the Gori Foundation, I will speak within the Gori Foundation because it's my experience talking with the donors. I was thinking about tone of voice, speaking to the international community. And I identify that it's very important to present yourself as a peer, but not to present yourself as those who are really poor and need help, and we do everything without focus. It's very important for as a local organization to think about the value that you can bring to the global level, and not think like they need to give us, but we are partners. And as the Gori Foundation is a donor organization, I remember this feeling when local organization came or applied to the grants with the attitude that this is the summary, I don't know the circle of change, like I think it will work. It's not okay. So this is a question about capacity also. We see many new organizations, they are very powerful, many of them quite good managers, but some of them even don't know how to communicate with the donors. And sometimes speaking to the colleagues, I hear that we don't have time for communication. Like, I like this phrase that the strategy people don't have time to communicate because you are doing your daily work, you are thinking about today, but you don't think about communication. So nobody is guilty in this story, not international community or local. And I think we need to understand that if we local organization wants us, that global community should hear us, we need to understand what we bring on the global plate, what we want to have, within partnership. So in my opinion, we need to build the capacity of local organization, but not on the ordinary way, like having some training, having some NGO assessment, and then building some procedures, because it's official things, but we need practical things. We need real management, and then collaborate with the local organization, like local with the locals. It's a big problem for local organization to unite. So we have many organizations dealing with the animals. We don't see even unofficial associations, because some of them do the same work. And if they communicate, if they have pool where to develop relationship among them, they will create some joint partnership, some joint projects, and then together with the, like, if it's unit, raise awareness of their needs on the global level. So I think that the importance of future collaboration with the global community, it's how we collaborate among local organizations, and how we develop our tone of voice, what we need, what our strategy for the future year, for the future 2 years, not thinking only about needs that we can cover today. Of course, it's very important to divide the emergency needs and the rebuilding processes, the development processes, because when people need water, and it's no doubt that we need to develop relationship and communication just to get the water. But when we speak about capacity building, when we speak about development of philanthropy, of capacity of local organizations, we need to have strategy, long-term strategy. And many of us, I'm speaking like of me, because I'm also from the local organization, and I understand how it's difficult to think about long-term without having any support, because having professional managers, we need to think how to support these managers financially, because working in business and working in NGO, the same management. I don't know if I am answering your question, Karolina.
Yeah, so like I could like round up it a little bit, and I'm totally agree that like this is why we need like the coalition, that to be like to be presentive, to be like visible, and that we need to like we need to have a like clear suggestion that we also came to this when we started the advocacy, that we need like to bring the solutions, not only the problems. Yes, Josie, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to bounce off what Evgennia said from the perspective of, I suppose, the international humanitarian system and the INGO perspective from CAFOD's point of view, which is that I think what Evgennia is saying about that mutual respect and mutual partnership of equals is completely central to, well, the way CAFOD works, but what we advocate for as well. And I think one of the big pushes for us to donors, to the UN system, to other INGOs that we are in connection with, is that capacity strengthening needs to change. The framing of capacity strengthening needs to change. We need to stop thinking about it and it needs to stop being presented as trainings, etc. But the aim of which is essentially to get local organizations to pass due diligence tests so that they can remain as sub-grantees to INGOs or UN mechanisms. What capacity strengthening should be is a mutual dialogue of equals in which both parties are learning from each other, but also that the end game or the end goal of that capacity strengthening process is that the local agency no longer needs an INGO, that they can be accessing those funding streams independently, and that, yeah, it's basically the idea is to get us out of a job, or to get INGOs out of a job completely. Understanding that there's learning to be had from both parties, but that should be the end goal.
Thanks.
I just wanted to add one example, just a second. When the war broke out, the Gori Foundation was focused on culture of giving. And the CRM system of the Gori Foundation was consisted of more than 1,500 organizations. And what came to our mind, to the whole team, that we can easily have questionnaires and have data about needs and activities. And then we distributed this information to the international organization. And the value that we wanted to bring on the global level, that colleagues, we are here for you. If you want to support Ukrainian organization, you can use all tools of grant support for local organizations through the Gori Foundation. And it was the best idea and the best, I would say, strategy in bringing value. We are here for you as a partner. And the Gori Foundation distributed more than $800,000 to the local organization last year. And then working with the grantees, we wanted them to bring that, guys, if you want to work with the donors, don't identify them as a donors. They are your partners, and think what value you can create together. So I think this thinking about value, like value of the partnership, and the best strategy is being able to manage other people's resources. It's very important to understand creation of ecosystem around your organization will help you to achieve your goals.
Thanks. I want to move to the next question, and I want to bring Olga on stage. This is so you, like, for me, your experience is a bit unique because you were like in Canada and you brought up like the whole team of individuals who are like all of them from Ukraine, someone from Ukraine, someone with Ukrainian background, and like you operated such a team with a lot of events. And from your experience, what was like the best practices, and or maybe like just your strategy that you developed when you like started bringing up the team to influence the decision makers? What was like the most powerful? Because like coming to the next step of this discussion, like when you have an idea, like what you want to advocate, you need to find the routes to do this.
Definitely, I agree with you totally. So basically what we have right now, Ukrainian Canadian Advocacy Group, it's Canadian nonprofit organization, and all of my members, basically like 60-70% is Canadians with Ukrainian roots. Basically their grandmother came from Ukraine. They don't know Ukrainian, but they are with this war super pumped to do something. They are professionals. We don't like, so we are not, maybe it will be rude from my side a little bit, but we have only professionals in their stage. And our focus is we are not focused to do events for Ukrainians, but we are focused to present Ukraine in Canada for Canadians. That's the most important. And so I remember first 2 months, we were extremely scared because we were like frightened that maybe it will be like in Syria, 2 months and everyone will forget about Ukraine. And we did something super opposite. We start, you know, you have to understand values in Canada and you have to come with Ukrainian values there as well. So there you will be able to involve more people. And it's really a great strategy to involve Canadians in Canada to work in this area and have a couple powerful Ukrainian there as well. Here in Ukraine, we have a separate team who is helping here locally. So basically, it's a bridge between Canada and Ukraine. Like we have our hand in Ukraine from USAC, Ukrainian Canadian Advocacy Group, and I'm like traveling every 3 months back and forth from Ukraine to Canada and from Canada to Ukraine. So this is our strategy so far. But I believe, Evgenia, I was listening to you, and I think it's what can be a motivation for people to join this platform if it will be a real verification. So basically here, USAC, here's rehabilitation, like here, like different sort of organization, and these people will be verified. And then if you will be able to find access to not local communities in Ukraine, but spread it among people, organization in the world, it will really work. Like maybe someone want to help for military, to support military, and someone want to support kids, and someone want to support animals, you know? If it will be like, if you will find some sort of regulation, people will want to join you. For example, I would love to join because it will be great networking. I will find people who also would love to work on rehabilitation side. So
Ola, definitely. So it's the idea. Maybe I didn't mention it because this is my first panel discussion after 2 months of a break, so I didn't mention it. Yes. So the main idea that this platform will be a tool of like a catalog for international organizations, but not only for international. You see. Imagine I am a beneficiary who is looking for organization working with the kids. So I will not call to organization working with the animals and then after that say nobody works with the kids. So this is a big problem also within Ukraine. People don't know what is the focus of organization. For potential beneficiaries who are looking for their top 3 organization in Ukraine, also this platform will work. So I see that it's needed. But you know, the CAF, for example, they do verification, and it's quite difficult. So in case organization can't get verification, we need to create opportunities to raise this organization in a small period of time, that this organization should appear on this platform also. So I think we need to discuss together.
Yeah, we need to discuss. That's a good point.
I'm like highly encouraging everyone to get into connection afterwards. You also can like check our chat, like exchange the contacts. Yeah, quick like follow up for Olga on the previous question. Did you like in your like part of work in Canada, did you try to reach like to the local authorities or to the like any kind of funds who are like from the Canadian government, and what was your approach in this?
Yeah, we already working with Canadian authorities. We are in British Columbia, in Vancouver. We already have all the connections with all ministers, with Latvian, with Lithuanian community. We have this communication. But unfortunately, what I noticed in Canada, as you mentioned, CAF, Canadian Ukrainian Foundation, for example, they fund kids only inside Canada. So I cannot do something with their grants here in Ukraine. And I'm still looking for private donors because I'm not impressed from Canadian Ukrainian system for giving funds, because they are orienting only for kids in Canada who came from Ukraine, and their grants it's just like $6,000. It's nothing, because our child in our camp cost $500 American. So in order to provide rehabilitation for 400 kids, we need like $200,000, So, and what we have now, we working with, just small tip, maybe you will like it, guys. We work with film industry in Vancouver, in Canada, and in United States, and they are really pumped about all rehabilitation stuff. So this is our strategy here. But we were, for sure, we are going to Congress, Ukrainian Congress. We saw Minister Prodan, like Minister of Defense there, but it's not what we are hoping to get. So also regards this platform, I think it should be verified by Ukrainian government as well. So maybe you have an idea Evgenia, how to make it happen, so then it will be harder to get through the verification, but it will be much more beneficial.
Okay, thanks. Next, my question is for Josie. So when we started writing the open letters and the advocacy, we had a huge discussion about should we bring the big foundations, should we let big foundations to sign the petitions and to bring them on stage as a kind of part of the change makers. And now as CAFOD is signed the Charter for Change, so you basically someone who possibly can be a problem became the part of solution. How do you see, what is your strategy in localization in change making, and how do you see the possibility to extract this idea that you should for other big foundation that you should join some advocacy measures on localization, at least partly, someone from your team that should be represented in this movement?
So I think before answering the parts about what we actually do and what we think the important things for people or for INGOs or foundations in our position to do on this, I think it's also important to recognize that although we are part of a system, the global humanitarian system, also potentially the development system, that is problematic in a lot of ways, there are also a lot of big international INGOs or big international foundations that are founded on principles that are different. So CAFOD has always been founded on the system of partnership and solidarity. That's part of the Catholic social teaching. It's part of our DNA. And there's plenty of other INGOs that are that also are based on those principles. And I think it is important to think that international solidarity is important and it needs to be encouraged. It needs to be encouraged in a way that is mutually respectful and accountable and equal with the organizations that are in the country in which these INGOs or international foundations are operating. So I think part of our role within the role that we have is to make sure that those around us in the same position as us, the people that we are at the table with, basically, that we can advocate for that to those people. So it's using the role that we have in the international sphere to argue for better forms of international solidarity with local organizations. In practice, I think that looks like, similar to what I said at the start, kind of three big pushes. One of them is less talk and more systematic and robust approaches to localization. So having things that are measurable, like pushing donors to publish what their commitments on localizing aid looks like and how can we measure progress against them publicly. What I said about capacity building, that's something that within the sector needs to change. It's not about getting local agencies to a place where they can be your sub-grantee. It's about getting local organizations or working with local organizations so that INGOs are no longer required within a crisis, and basically a local organization can do the response themselves. But I also think that there's a big piece that we haven't really touched on yet in this conversation, which is is a challenge that also needs to be addressed, and it needs to work both from INGOs perspective, from INGOs and from local NGOs or organizations. And that's actually about accountability, because I think we're ignoring the elephant in the room if we think that a lot of the funding that is coming into this crisis, although there are initiatives like the Gori Foundation platform about trying to bring local philanthropy in, a lot of the funding that's gone into Ukraine at the moment is public funds from the West or from a lot of these big donor countries. And with that comes a huge amount of accountability requirements. That isn't necessarily fair, and it's not always proportionate to what actually is being done on the ground. And so that is something that we need to argue for as well. Fair, accountable, and proportionate ways in which we are accountable for the funds that are being used in crises, and not only accountable to donors or to the publics that are giving these funds, but also more importantly accountable to the communities in which those funds are being used. And that's a really big piece, I think, as well.
Yeah, like coming to like my next question, I want to follow up with like story from our like experience that now we are running the kind of the campaign for like more than 8 months, and we came up like to kind of this like glass wall when you have a lot of people on boards and you know that like you are supported and you kind of can, and I reached today all of you and I'm like really thankful that you reacted so fast, but at the same time you have like this barrier to bring like the actual change, to say something that, yeah, like this is changed not like only on level for us that like, I don't know, like we agreed for the new partnership or for the new project, but it's changed like on the level of society where, you know, that like all other Ukrainian foundations will be able to like assess the same help, the same change. And we like tested a lot of theories, what is like the best way to push these changes, from, I don't know, like personal letters to like some donors to make to like push them make the public statements, or now we like came up to the idea that we want to try like a few like pilot projects on with like new rules of localization that we want to share as an experience. What is like what do you think can bring like this like global big changes in like faster way? What is like this like small steps that you probably can like encourage to do like other coalitions or individuals?
I've only recently come into the policy and advocacy space. I used to just really be a program like person and work really on programming. So one of the things I find really frustrating in this is how slow it is and how difficult it is to see change. I find it so frustrating. I'm used to working with, you know, Excel spreadsheets and budgets. The answers are very clear and they're very quick. And I think there isn't really one answer to that question. I think the coalition element is the key though. And I think Evgennia said it earlier about bringing together local agencies or local organizations or CSOs or whatever, and having one voice or multiple voices maybe, but like as a joint unified voice. And I think that's really happening in Ukraine. We're seeing so many new platforms coming up that are about coordinating local voices as opposed to INGO coordination platforms in which we're inviting like local NGOs to come in and tell us what they think. No, like it's being led and being coordinated from INGOs for and by local NGOs. And I think that's really important. If you have that voice of more than one person speaking, obviously that's a lot stronger. But the other thing is we need to push for measurable change. Like we've been hearing about localization and INGOs talk about it, donors talk about it, the UN system talks about it, about how it's really important, it's the buzzword, it's everywhere, but yet we need measurable outcomes that we can actually hold people accountable to, saying, yes, you're for localization, that's great. So what are you doing about your overhead costs to your partners? Are you paying fairly for office costs or whatever? Are you checking to see that the partnerships that you're talking about are actually valuable for you, but also for the local partner that you're working with? So having those accountability checks in place publicly, I think, is really important. How we get there is we just have to keep pushing. And UN CAFOD is part of various INGO coordination mechanisms here in London, for instance, where we push our government to do more, pushing them to do more with UN systems. It's just constantly, I think, breaking away at the various places where power is held.
Thanks, Josie. Yeah, anyone else to contribute if you have any ideas?
I will keep the same line about relationships because I see that it's very important, and I think how should we develop the dialogue? First of all, we need to communicate within local organizations, and we need to create our events, our roundtables, and invite international community, not to be only a part, or like to be invited, but also to invite, because we need to generate agenda, and not only to participate in the agenda of international community, but being the creators of our agenda and to raise this agenda. So of course, it's also a question of capacity of how we have the skills of raising this communication, and it's also about unity of us, of a local organization. I see it's within culture in Ukraine. So we are united when we have to to cover some fires things. But when we go on a straight line, we think like we can do by our own. So it's very important to unite within other focuses, because all us we have other focuses within our activities. I'm sure, definitely sure, that we have some joint focuses as our I don't know, some difficult question that we would like international community to focus, but it's we are powered enough to raise this question and to generate our agenda.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I have like, well, it's kind of more than follow-up than a question, but yeah, so we don't want to be like demanding as well, and I'm also like keen on the idea of like the equal partnership where like Ukrainian society and Ukrainian interests need to be presented with some kind of calm energy, because it's like what keep us like stoic and respectful, but at the same time we want to like make people feel accountable. So my question is more like about the kind of voice of communication, like the tone of communication that, for example, you are using in your strategies to present your ideas. For example, like Olga, like I saw some of your film projects as well, and it's like really inspiring from the cultural point of view. So how do you make a point? What is your tone of voice, like speaking from your group of interests?
That's a hard question, you know, like you just have to be in context what's going on here in Ukraine, and you have to be in really good context what's going on in Canada. For example, for Independence Day previous year, 24th of August, what we had online and offline presentation about occupied territories. We made posters. We presented in Ottawa as well, near the government. We presented that in Vancouver. Because like you saw, Ukrainian Canadian Advocacy Group, we are a federal organization. So we operating in different cities, like big cities in Canada. So the next we had a Holodomor event, and we show exactly what has, not only what has happened, but we also showed what's going right now. We have a question about grain, for example. So we try to put cultural context in the real context right now. So we really like create this like ties, and it is where, and also it is extremely important for, like, I can speak about Canadians, like what they are care about. They are also are farmers, and it is like relevant for them as well. So basically what we do is just like we have a couple few creative people as well. So we know what to do. They were working here in Ukraine. You know, Ukrainians are extremely creative. They just need a good platform for that. So it's like how we are, like what we are doing exactly. Yeah. If you have more questions, just inspire me. Maybe I will tell you more, because it's like really hard to say like our strategy.
Yeah, I know. Just like the point is that, like, for example, our voice of communication was called like quite demanding. So I'm curious about like approaches of others.
Now we are loud, we are in context, we are showing something really unique. For example, our last event, it was 31st of May. We raised for 40,000 Canadian dollars. We showed a Ukrainian movie. A film director from Ukraine came to us, and we really pinpoint for that we are gathering for kids, and we had lots of people from Canadian film industry as well. We had even Linda Hamilton from Terminator, so she supported this project as well. So that's nice to bring some local voices, Ukrainian, newcomers, Canadians, and we are trying to make it interesting for all of them, not only just screaming about how poor we are. We really give we're trying to give a high quality events. So we have drinks, for example, we have like context, we have like we're really trying to give a high quality stuff. So that's why it works.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm also like reminding everyone that we have the open space, and you can like ask your questions in chat or just like raise your hand and we will. Yeah. Oh, here is a question. Nick, please.
Hi, Nick Dejcik with the Charles Stewart Mott Foundation. I'm currently in Croatia at the Philia conference, where there have been talk and sessions about Ukraine, so it's very encouraging. I just wanted to first say that one of the ways that we believe our foundation, which has supported the development of community foundations around the world for probably over 50 years, that one of the best ways to get to that local grassroots level is through these local philanthropic organizations. And so it's so great that the National Network for Local Philanthropy Development in Ukraine is this robust and strong network that is helping to advance that. So there, and one of the ways to kind of make this practical is to link Ukrainian community foundations with ones in other countries. There were several who came to a meeting that the Global Fund had organized last week in Bucharest. Next week, there will be a delegation of community foundations from Ukraine coming to the Community Foundations of Canada conference in Toronto. And the hope is that not only will they, of course, learn from their sort of organizations that have been maybe around longer, but that they will share their stories and have contacts and develop contacts, not only with community foundations in Canada, but their donors, because they have developed systems of, and they're more probably understanding of organizations that are similar to them, that at least are community foundations. So that's one way that I think is a possibility for outside funders or global level funders to be able to get, to, if they want to find the local level groups, to work through somebody like the National Network for Local Philanthropy Development, and then further on through community foundations. Now there's only, I think, around 15 to 20 of them in Ukraine right now, which isn't that many for a country of 40 million, but it's still at least a good start. So if you don't mind, I wanted to make that comment and inform people of that is one of the ways I think that can help to get to the local level and hopefully even ensure accountability. Another comment I wanted to make in response to what Josie said is that there will be this conference on Ukraine's reconstruction and recovery in London coming up in a couple of weeks. And all signals point to the fact that the Ukrainian government has, in essence, been, it kind of ignored civil society. They, formally they were saying, well, yes, of course, but they're not really letting them into the picture. So to the extent that INGOs can be putting pressure on some of the, the funders that are the multilaterals, as well as in their relations to Ukraine, to give this message that I think we all believe in, which is you have to pay attention to the local level, to the citizen voice, to what people think is important in the recovery and reconstruction. That will be helpful. And that, I think, has to happen in many ways, by national organizations in Kyiv, by international NGOs, by the external funding community, and most importantly, by the population from below as they work with their own kind of local authorities on this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The good point. I mean, it's, I before like the next is Jeanette, just a quick comment. That's, this is exactly the theme also raised in a chat, that it's about like being equal not only means like that you can speak as equal, that you like kind of in a dialogue, but it's also about like the decision making where you at least like invited to bring up like your idea. And when you have like when you have the ability to change something in a process, when you don't have like that many strict rules, or the rules that are like implied to be non-negotiable, they are at least somehow argumented, and like that you understand the reality of the other side. Thank you. Yes, Jeanette.
Sorry, I was just copy pasting the emails in the chat that I want to keep. Thank you. I mentioned in the chat already that we've worked with directly with small CSOs, as we call them now, NGOs, all over Ukraine. We started by offering on the 27th of February last year to our existing partners in Ukraine to help them with their humanitarian efforts. And they developed, we're now funding about 60 organizations. We could see, at least we appeared to think that last year, that some of the very big INGOs, and some of you may know there was a DEC, a Disasters Emergency Committee, call for donations from the public, which raised, I think in the end, something like 300 million pounds and euros, about the same. But all our partners were saying, we're not seeing this, we're not getting this money, where is it going? And we got the sense that they were actually having, these big organizations have very complex due diligence processes, and they were having difficulty actually reaching the kind of voluntary organizations in Ukraine that were actually doing the work on the ground, evacuating people, delivering basic supplies and so on. So we offered to a couple of them to work with them and to help them distribute, but they weren't interested. But on the much more positive level, I think they're doing much better now from what I can tell. But they don't report very in much detail on their websites. We have noticed that whereas in the past, NGOs in Ukraine were working sort of more or less on their own, or appeared to be, they're networking really well now. In Zaporizhia, for example, some groups have joined together and are covering different parts of the city and the region, but they're networking together. And this is something we promote a lot as an organization. And in fact, we have a new project starting, which will involve networking between partner NGOs. Another thing that has struck us about the big donors is that we hear from one of our partners in Kherson, for example, that they are having to distribute packages of assistance to villages because the big donors sort of drop it off in the big middle of the city somewhere and just go away again. And they haven't got any arrangements set up for distributing it. But that requires petrol and vehicles and such like. So we're funding the petrol so that they can actually drive this stuff to the villages, because the big INGOs are really not prepared, not dealing with the sort of downstream arrangements. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for the point. Yeah, I'm just want to say that Evgennia is leaving soon, and we just want to say bye-bye to her, and then we keep going. Yeah, Josie, please.
Yeah, I wanted to come in on I suppose both of the last comments, and what Janet is saying is sadly very reflective of what we've been hearing since the start of the crisis. And I think what you're saying, Janet, about some of the coordination improving on the ground, that is amazing, and we've been seeing that as well. What isn't changing is that the bulk of the money for this for the crisis in Ukraine, which is one of the best, I mean, it is the best funded humanitarian crisis in the world at the moment. And CAFOD is a DEC member, just as a disclaimer, and we did receive that funding. And I know other organizations, I think on this call, are also DEC members. And one of the things that was interesting, we found, and it's been recognized in some of the reviews that have happened on the kind of large scale response funded by UK organizations, is that certain partners or certain organizations were able to get funding out really quickly and start responding immediately, and others really struggled. And I mean, I think my opinion is that the way that we, the organizations that didn't struggle to get money out immediately and start responding immediately, were the organizations that were working with local partners, because local partners, local Ukrainian organizations are those that are doing still, and we know this, are doing most of the work, taking most of the risks, and delivering most of the aid, but yet the money is still being it's failing to trickle down properly from the top of the system. So unless we change, I think initiatives like what you're talking about, Janet, about funding petrol, and kind of linking philanthropists in the UK or in Canada with organizations in Ukraine is one way of getting around this failure of trickling down. But the reality is the bulk of the money is in the humanitarian system. So we need to change that humanitarian system if we want real, I mean, larger scale change to happen. And I think that's why CAFOD is putting so much effort into the advocacy around changing that humanitarian system specifically, because I think that's where we can really make a large scale difference, but it is quite slow. So just to refer people back to the recommendations that came out of a series of local workshops that happened in Ukraine over the course of last year and the beginning of this year. I put them in the chat. I think Nick from Refugees International also put a link in there. So it was a series of workshops that local NGOs and civil society organizations in Ukraine came together, discussed what they needed to change this system. And we then held a final kind of national workshop to kind of summarize all of these findings and bring all of these local organizations together. And we ensured that donor organizations and UN representatives were at this meeting to be able to give a platform to the people who are actually doing the front line, taking the risks, give them a platform to be able to voice what it is that needed to change in order to make the funding get down to them, basically. And yeah, so I think there's 10 recommendations. They're all in that document, and these are really, we think anyway, and well, not only us, but a lot of other organizations who participated in these workshops, that is the way that we can change that system. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Alex?
Very much. Although Evgenia has just gone, most of what I wanted to say was addressed to things that she has said about particularly how do you actually go around finding the myriad of interesting, promising Ukrainian local NGOs? One approach that we've adopted, we're a coalition of 3 NGOs, rather sort of a Catholic and sort of a European American anti-corruption NGO, which is based on former staff members of the World Bank, my own organization, which is a Western Balkans investigative journalism outfit, and most importantly, our Ukrainian partner, the Odessa branch of the Committee of Voters of Ukraine, which isn't actually a humanitarian organization, but is a very wide spectrum civil society organization. And we've took it upon ourselves to, starting out from Odessa, scout to sort of map the whole of the Odessa humanitarian NGO scene. And they have used their local knowledge to go and do in-depth, in-situ interviews with local humanitarian NGOs. That process itself sort of really sorts out on the ground with a detailed interviewing process, and actually in situ, actually matching up the realities with what is claimed and so forth. And then it also allows us to find further local NGOs. So it's a process that allows us to sort of really sort of on the ground sort of map out and find and sort of bring out of the woods in a way more of these organizations. And we're finding, of course, that there has been a huge mass starting in the first months of the war. They've gradually thinned out because, as we know, they've been relying mostly on their own resources. Those that are surviving are tending to tilt now more towards a little bit more towards reconstruction, also to branching out to other areas, to Kherson, to Mykolaiv, and so forth. And we've used our engagement with them to elicit from them what are their needs, requirements. They're all desperately needing contact with the international donor community. They don't have the network. They don't know how to do it. They don't have developed organizational structures. So we've been sort of working out with them what is a sort of menu of training and mentoring approaches that we need to adopt to actually get them on the first rung of that ladder towards international visibility, towards grant eligibility and so forth. We're actually beginning our first trainings right now this week with mentoring follow-up and expanding to Mykolaiv with the hope of expanding to further areas. So the initiative that Evgennia has described, I think, would be something that we could definitely find synergy with.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, anyone else to comment further on this from the speakers, or we could carry on? Yeah, there is like really interesting topic going on in the chat about the due diligence and the idea of like the efficiency. Yeah, again, I want to make a short comment. When we try to like develop the recommendations for the donors, like how we see we can like increase the efficiency, because for us now, like for the organizations who are like acting on site in Ukraine, it's not always possible to even reach some documents because they could be like damaged or not. Unfortunately, not all documents are digitalized. And one of like our like last programs, which is it's like the humanitarian help delivery, like mainly it's building materials from shelter works, like the emergency packages, and half of the documentation that can be used like next time for the verification system for reporting, which is a part of the due diligence process. It's like you need to like collect it manually, then like digitalize, and then like do it again and again. And we have some ways around. I mean, there is some like apps that are developed that can make it more efficient. Can be like negotiated like some stages of even like delivering this like reports and documents to approve yourself. So for example, you have like an initial package, and then after like some processing you can like add more, because sometimes for us, it's just like, it's matter of like hours, not even days, when you would like receive this. And for sure, at some point, it's also trust, which is, we can't say when it comes to like finances and like millions of dollars, you can't operate only on trust. But we need, like, our point is just like, we need to be realistic about like our expectations to each other. And in this point, we like, for sure, we can't ask like to cancel everything and like to just work on like agreements, but we need to like review the process. And when it comes to like personal cooperation, just like see what is like really necessary and what can be like delivered afterwards. Yes, Jenny, please.
Thank you, everyone, for the conversation so far. I just sort of wanted to draw a line between an exchange, well, Karolina, one of your comments, and then Josie, what you were saying about, Josie, your comment about, you know, this is the best funded humanitarian crisis like ever, and how little money has still got to local organizations. And Karolina kind of asking tentatively, was it wrong to be so bold to ask to shift the power? And I mean, I think one answers the other. The idea that somehow the words partnership, solidarity are used to cover power dynamics and a failure to transform, I think is really, really significant and has to be called out. It's just not acceptable in this day and age, after this much pressure, this much rhetoric around localization, for this to be the case. But also, I think your point, Josie, about, I think that there's a real area of work to be done around the notion of accountability. So I'm with the Global Fund for Community Foundations. We've worked with a number of the community foundations in Ukraine and globally. And I think this idea that if you are local, legitimate, trusted, credible, have social capital, the idea that external accountability can actually undermine your relationships with communities is really true. And I think we've seen that in a number of instances, that donor demands actually require civil society organizations to change their behaviors, and then they lose the very essence of the thing they have, which is knowledge of the community. So I really do see that that's a really important area for negotiation in a systemic area, is how do you use proxies for local accountability that would tick the boxes for donor or more kind of vertical types of accountability. And I feel like the opportunity to weave that conversation with people across the system and advocate for that, to say accountability is fine, it's legitimate, but at the moment we only focus on one type of accountability, and that is what donor funds can buy rather than how communities can be involved. So I really do think that's a really key action point, that we could actually bring minds together from across the system to start thinking about how you renegotiate that kind of conversation. But thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, anything to add on the due diligence process, and or maybe other topics to bring up?
I think just on the due diligence, it is a huge it's a very large debate. I think it does come up a lot, and it's one of the things, I suppose not oddly, but I think we found anyway, it's one of the topics within these recommendations that we're pushing on that INGOs are most open to discussing, which is quite interesting. I think in some ways it's seen as quite an easy win for INGOs in a lot of cases, because it's saying that, you know, yes, we'll try and make due diligence, certain aspects of the due diligence conversation, specifically due diligence passporting, in which we say, yes, we'll accept due diligence from other organizations, rather than making local organizations redo a whole system each time they have to apply for a grant. But I think it's also, there's a danger of that just becoming quite an easy win and it not actually deeply changing the system at all, because all it's saying is that we will just make doing due diligence for donors a little bit easier, but we're still not addressing the fact that we need to do due diligence or accountability towards communities. And for that, we need a complete rehaul of what that looks like. And I think there are organizations out there doing it. And I think, yeah, we just need to have more of a conversation about it. One of the other big areas, I think one of the other big issues around this conversation, though, is that often the people in the room who are discussing it are people like us in this room, or even in our NGO conversations, it's often people who are delivering or managing programs, when actually the conversation probably needs to be, or definitely needs to be had with finance departments and internal audit departments, not with program staff, because I think program staff are usually on board with trying to make due diligence easier for local partners, or for looking at other ways to do accountability towards communities. But the bottom line usually lies with the financial controllers within these organizations. So just a comment.
Thanks. Okay, we're kind of finishing, and I want to just have like one closing question to speakers, and also if someone wants to answer from the audience as well. So coming back to our like starting point, that we all have kind of coalitions or the initiative groups. And if, for example, I'm currently in Ukraine or in any other country and I want to support the interests, how should I pick up like my own initiative group? How should they like research who may want to join? And yeah, let's maybe like discuss for the different points, like for individuals and like for foundations, what is like the best way to like jump into the changes movement.
I think I can answer very briefly, because I don't think as CAFOD and an NGO, I'm the best place to answer that, because thankfully there are Ukrainian-led coordination platforms and initiatives that will be much more accessible for anybody, either Ukrainian individual or foundation, to be joining. CAFOD has helped to organize some of those, but there's a myriad of other different initiatives that are popping up around the place, which is amazing. I would say that the joint recommendations that I referred to earlier, that was an initial, that process involved a really large number of local organizations, and that's just one example. So starting off with something that's been published like that, or the open letter that was published last year either, and then just taking it from there and reaching out to any of the organizations involved in those processes is definitely, would seem to me like the best way in, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Olga? Okay, I can make a point for myself as well. So there is, yeah, for me is like, I'm highly encouraging like everyone to, even if you don't plan to like participate actively, or you don't have time to contribute, just like your acknowledgement or the signature, or I don't know, post in social media means like a lot for us, like for people who are advocating. So if you will like spend some time and just research on the initiatives and like find the one that like also you have like just the similar values, and you want like to acknowledge their existence, it will be a huge contribution. Yeah, Olga, please.
Hi guys, I'm so sorry. It was really nice to meet all of you. Hopefully for further cooperation, I really hope for that. And now I have to go because we have a rehabilitation camp just in 1 hour. I have to go to Yaramchu. We're meeting 45 kids right now. So hopefully wish me luck and thank you for all of your work. Hopefully we will meet in person one day, hopefully. Okay guys, have a good day. Bye-bye.
Ciao, ciao. Yeah, so yeah, I think we will end here. Thank you, everyone. You can find all of our contacts in the chat. Subscribe to our Twitter. We are posting sometimes some interesting stuff in there, and to follow up like our next event. Yeah, it was a nice discussion, and we will send you the follow-up afterwards on your mail.
Thank you, Karolina. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.